that was moving. It's now my great pleasure to introduce somebody who doesn't really need an introduction, Senator Mazie Hirono. Senator Mazie Hirono.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I want to start by thanking Gay because she knew that I'm very allergic to highly scented lace, so she made me a pink ribbon lei. It's recycled, and she said, I thought you would like that, and I do. I think this is great. Thank you so much. I often start conversations these days by saying that these are not normal times. So it's not normal, and that therefore every single one of us should not be doing the normal things that we do when we get upset, angry, or motivated by anything. You got to do more. You know, this president's virulent anti-immigrant, anti-immigration stance started from the very moment, as you all know, when he announced his candidacy saying that Mexicans are rapists. And from there, it runs the gamut. You know, the zero tolerance policy and all the heartache and damage that we did through that policy, which, by the way, is still being played out because some of these children still have not been reunited with their parents, to the ending of DACA, exposing 800,000 participants in DACA who signed up wanting to make a better life for themselves in this country, exposing 800,000 participants to deportation, to the ending of even something as, I would say, in the scheme of things, small, but not to the families who are affected. They want to end the parole program that Barack Obama did to enable Filipino World War II veterans to reunite with their children. Many of these children have been waiting for over 20 years. And I worked closely with the Obama administration to implement that when I couldn't get this issue passed as an individual bill. There are only a few thousand of these Filipino World War II veterans left. What is to be gained by eliminating this program? And you know what? It's all about cruelty. So today, every day, I put out a statement today that I think the Trump people sit around every single day trying to figure out what other painful, cruel thing they can do to migrants. Literally. And just recently, you know, that they're putting together the public charge rule that will make it harder for people to come into our country, and that will make it harder for people to stay in our country. So it's like a double bind situation, squeeze. They make it really plain how much they don't want certain kinds of immigrants into our country. So just yesterday was a public charge rule. Today, what was today? He did something else today. Oh yes, how can we forget? Yeah. So now, yes, he wants a rule. The only way they can get around the floor settlement of the requirement that children cannot be detained more than 20 days in their quest to detain families in detention facilities, they are putting forth a rule. So I do have a bill that I'll be introducing in the Senate that will stop them from using any money to implement this particular, well, no, the public charge. We've introduced so many bills, you know, but none of them will ever see the light of day because Mitch McConnell will not bring these bills to the floor of the Senate. And he revels in calling himself the Grim Reaper. So yes, I have been to the border. I've been working on comprehensive immigration reform since I got elected to the Senate 2013. Very much involved in that huge bill where I articulated that family unity should continue to be a guiding principle for any immigration reform. I have to say I was a pretty lone voice on that Judiciary Committee in the Senate at that time. But I think there's so much more recognition and realization how important family unity is, especially, of course, for the Democrats. And then in 2014, I went to Texas, to the McAllen facility. 2015, I went to other facilities, and most recently, Tim Kaine and I went to El Paso to visit those facilities there, the Border Patrol stations there. There is no question that Trump has been a major reason aside from the horrible conditions and dangers that face the Northern Triangle people, that Trump himself has, I would say, has responsibility for the number of people who are coming into our country, where he can abuse them and impose cruelties on them. So what can we do? I'll end by saying that these are not normal times. And I'm glad that all of you are here. And I had a chance to talk with someone sitting back there who said she wants to do more, but what can she do? There are immigration groups all across the country who are providing assistance. There are nonprofit groups such as Annunciation House that I visited twice, where they provide support, bus fare, whatever they have to do for those who are actually released from the detention facilities to enable them to connect with relatives in our country. I tell you that it's something to talk to these committed people at Annunciation House. And by the way, the bill that we passed most recently, which I couldn't vote for, I voted for the House version. I couldn't vote for the multi-million-dollar version that didn't have enough parameters that would prevent using the money that we provided to enable better conditions in the facilities or detention centers. It didn't have enough parameters, so I did not vote for it. But Annunciation House, it did have money that goes to some of these nonprofits, and Annunciation House told me they are not accepting any of those funds. So there are people out there all over the country that needs your help, whether by financial or phone calls. And of course, the bottom line is for what we can do. It's the people who are in the House and Senate who are not supporting these bills. We have a number of bills that create fair processes, legal processes that impose or require humane treatment and that address the root causes of the dangers in the Northern Triangle countries. So these bills will never come to the fore unless we have people who are going to vote for these bills. And that is a pretty simple thing to recognize, that elections matter. And I have said publicly many times that the Senate would be a better place without Mitch McConnell. So you can bet I'm not exactly on his favorite people's list, but I want to make it plain to connect the dots that Mitch McConnell could have ended the government shutdown that was totally unnecessary. He could have done that by bringing that bill to the floor, the House passed bill. He could bring any number of these bills to the floor. He could bring the gun legislation, the gun safety bill that was passed by the House to the floor, but he won't do any of those things. And his admission, he likes to be called the Grim Reaper. Well, the Senate, even if it doesn't turn Democrat, although we're going to do all our very best, even if it's not Democratic, without Mitch McConnell, who is probably the most ruthless person I've ever watched and what he does and how he does it, it would be a far better place. So there are a lot of great candidates. We need to take back the White House and take back the Senate and keep the House. So there's lots you can do. Not normal times. Do whatever you have to do not normal things. Raise your voices. Thank you.
Senator Hirono has agreed to stay and answer a few questions. What we'd like to do is, if you have a question, would like to say something to the senator, please come up and use the microphone so everyone else can hear.
Hello, my name is Nancy, and I am Mexican, and I'm not a rapist or a drug smuggler. One of the things I'm doing to get Mitch McConnell out is I'm giving money every month to Amy McGraw's campaign, and I think that's really important for people to realize that, giving money in a different state can really help us, especially if we can get Mitch McConnell out. It's so important. He is the worst. He is the one that's stopping everything. And to me, he's worse than the president, even because the president's just a buffoon. So the other thing I want to mention is that with this new Flores settlement, I'm wondering, is it just going to become another almost like in prison industrial complex where private money is money from the security, Homeland Security budget is going to go into these privatized quasi-prisons for these people, because the Flores settlement will bring families in and keep the families together, because that's how they're going to pitch it. We're not going to separate children from their families, but they're going to keep the families in there indefinitely.
Yes.
So that's what's really, really scary. I'd like to know your opinion on, what's the motive behind it? Is it a money-making thing? Is there a deal that Trump has with another, a company that's going to build these in prison camps, in these encampments? I mean, how does that work? Thank you.
The impetus by this administration is to be as cruel as possible. In fact, I've come to the conclusion that cruelty is the point. As far as the new Flores rule, there are entities such as we have Josh Wish from ACLU. There will be an immediate legal challenge because there is a judge in California, Judge G, who has jurisdiction over the Flores Agreement cases. So it's going to go before her, and the Trump people are going to have to figure out how to get this out of her hands. That's going to be a battle in itself. So there will be a legal challenge. The thing about this Trump administration is just about every action that is taken by this administration, every executive order, starting with the Muslim ban, by the way, which I'm proud that the state of Hawaii was one of the first to challenge, results in a lawsuit. And so can you imagine the resources, the number of lawyers, the money that ACLU, NAACP, and all these other organizations have to expend? And it's to the point where I actually heard Vice President Pence say they wanted to figure out a way to get to the Supreme Court the issue of whether or not the lower courts, the district courts, can issue nationwide injunctions, because don't you know there's so many injunctions that have been imposed against our administration? It is so unfair. Oh, boo-hoo, bullshit. That's all I can say. So, you know what? It is amazing, but we got to fight back. And thank goodness, even as they are packing the courts left, right, and center, including starting with, of course, the Supreme Court, they want to have all of our courts peopled with those who are on their ideological page. And the people who Trump nominates for the courts for lifetime appointments, who will be making decisions that will impact all of our lives, are people who have made very plain their ideological perspectives as far as LGBTQ rights, voting rights, women's choice, you name it. And so Trump has already gotten over 100 judges on the courts. And I just want to mention that is going to be one of his major lasting legacies. These people with lifetime appointments, and they tend to be share certain traits. They're usually young, so they can be on the courts for decades. They're usually white, and they're usually male. And it would turn your stomach, literally, the kind of perspectives and things that they have written on their path to their nomination. So we have to pay attention to what's going on there. And then, of course, that, again, is the people in the Senate who confirm all these nominees. So we need to take back the Senate. Thank you for working on Amy McGrath. There were plenty of other good candidates, too.
Thank you. One more.
I'm Steve Dawson, and I have a question for Mazie. Periodically, Mazie, I send my thoughts to Senator McConnell and to President Trump by email. Is that a complete waste of time?
What do you think? No, I wouldn't say it's a waste of time, but you know what? I mean, sometimes we just have to do those things that keep our motivations and our engagement, and if it makes you feel, as long as that's not all you're doing, because it makes us feel better. You know what? One of the things they want to do is suppress our anger and make us so frustrated that we just won't bother to vote. By the way, voter suppression tactics are going on nationwide. And you think this Attorney General is going to challenge any of those? So we have to watch efforts to get us so frustrated and angry that we'll all stay home. So yes, you can keep doing that, but that's not all you need to do.
Do they tabulate everything?
I have no idea what the heck they do, really. And we all know we have a president who doesn't listen to anybody except himself. And there are only two things he cares about: protecting his okole. And when I said that nationally, the national press had to go look in the dictionary and put in parentheses, oh, this means behind. So he cares about protecting his okole and money. Those are the two things that motivate Trump.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights. My name is Natalie Rita. I'm a PhD candidate at UH Manoa. I had one question. So obviously getting rid of the Trump administration is very important in regards to immigrant rights. But I worry that the Democratic Party has also adopted some anti-immigrant legislation over the past 20 years. The public charge rule is an expansion of a policy that was adopted during the Clinton administration that stripped green card holders away from public benefits. So how do we ensure that we just don't stop the Trump administration, but we also expand immigrant rights in the United States?
Oh, I'm all for you. But in order to do that, because a lot of that, in my view, has to happen with comprehensive immigration reform, because we have 11 million plus people in our country who are living in the shadows, totally without documents. They're paid a lot of taxes and all of that. So, yeah, we have to do comprehensive immigration reform. And I think with all the horrors of this administration, I think there is there's much more awareness of the negative impacts of these kinds of rules that have been put in place. But you know what? I mean, what Trump administration does is they do it like many times over. So first things first, we have to get some people into office that will undo or do the kinds of legislation that we need to pass.
Thank you so much.
Hi, my name's Eileen. Thank you for being here. One thing we didn't mention was the birthright citizenship that Trump is threatening again, 14th Amendment. So, one thing we haven't mentioned yet is, because there's too much, the birthright citizenship, 14th Amendment, that Trump wants to take executive action and take that away. So he talked about that before.
Yes, that's another thing.
Yes.
So the 14th Amendment that basically says that if you are born in this country, you are a U.S. citizen. So when Attorney General Barr came before the Judiciary Committee, I asked him, what is your view on birthright citizenship? And his answer was he would have to ask the Office of Legal Counsel for advice on that. I said, it's right there in the Constitution. You want me to read it to you? So it is just amazing that we have an Attorney General who says he'll have to look into it. It says so right there. And by the way, they can't change birthright citizenship with an executive order.
Right. Would that immediately go to the courts? Or?
But it just goes to show you how far they are willing to go to keep people from coming to our country or being able to stay in our country and get green cards.
Mazie Hirono, you're a hero to all of us here. We admire everything you do. Going back into that arena out there. Since we're in a religious context here, I'm reminded of the thought that one should cast no one out of your heart. But it was relatively easy for me to forgive people for voting for Trump. But now that there's so many terrible cards on the table, it's really hard to understand people that still stand with this administration and what they're doing. Given that you have to work with your colleagues across the aisle in the Senate, what have you learned about how to somehow maintain some civility and respect for people that you just can't understand what they're doing?
There are certain issues that are so important that I think they're able to compartmentalize a lot. For example, on the vote on getting rid of the Affordable Care Act, we managed to save that by only one vote. So to talk to colleagues who have no problems voting to eliminate health care for 20 million people all in one fell swoop, you know, it's not the kind of thing that I can say, don't you know that what you're doing is wrong? Because obviously they know it, but they're doing it anyway, or they don't even want to face that. On immigration, hardly any of them raises a peep. But they're just, you know, I think the Trump moral dead zone just spreads its venom all over, and he spreads fear in the hearts of the Republicans. Hardly any of them will ever speak up unless they're retiring. So they're very afraid of their re-elections. But I tell you, if re-election means that much to you, and you have to ask yourself, you know, are you willing to sell your soul? So I don't have those kinds of discussions with my colleagues on the other side of the aisle on votes that are so obviously wrong, but they're doing it anyway. I mean, what the heck, right? It's not like I can convince them. I do work with them on a number of other issues. Believe it or not, I have worked on getting legislation passed with Mike Lee of Utah with who else? Joni Ernst of Iowa. There are a number of, in fact, maybe we shouldn't tell Trump, but he has actually signed quite a few of my bills into law. I don't think they tell him who the introducers are. And in fact, I'm introducing a bill with Ted Cruz. So, you know what, I mean, there are ways that I can work with them, but you know what, these days, I just speak out, and you know, it does get a rise out of a number of people, but so what? These are not normal times. So, you just have to keep going, and you know, I'm very grateful to all of you for your encouragement, because sure, there are times when we all get discouraged, but one thing I'll recommend to all of you: Trumpless Sundays. On Sundays, I don't watch the news. I don't do anything except that which will make me laugh or make me happy. And I suffer no guilt. I look forward to it. And in fact, Breitbart said, oh, she's so obsessed with Trump that she has to have Trumpless Sundays. But there are so many other people who say what a great idea that is, and I will recommend it to everyone, because we need to restore our souls and our equilibrium. So if you want to eat something, eat it on that Sunday.
Thank you very much, Senator Hirono.
Thank you very much.
Let's give her a big round of applause.